But thank you guys for joining. My name is Evelyn Ramos with the Career and Professional Development Center. We're doing our Resume 101 session today. And we have a guest speaker, a guest host with us today, Tiffany. Thanks for joining. And we'll be reviewing as we go through. But yes, thank you, Tiffany. Did you want to introduce yourself, share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, certainly. So hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name's Tiffany Miller. I am the senior recruiter at Gallo, and I specifically manage our undergraduate program. So I recruit all of our incoming interns and some of our entry-level full-time opportunities as well. I've been with Gallo for about 3 years now. Overall, I've been in recruitment for actually about 7. And then just a little bit about me. I'm from Seattle, Washington. So all of this rainy weather that we're getting today and last couple of weeks have been making me nostalgic. And then I guess just fun facts. I have a rescue dog and cat. So it's nice to meet everybody. Yeah, so a little bit about Gallo. So we are the largest family-owned winery actually in the world. We produce not only wine and spirits. Our founders, Julio and Ernest, actually started Gallo right after the Prohibition ended. So in 1933, they actually went down to the local Stanislaus Library, rented a book on winemaking, and that is how Gallo actually got started. And that picture that you're seeing on the screen, that's actually the Gallo family members that are still with the company today.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little delayed on my but yeah, thank you for sharing. And thanks again for being with us. I know a lot of our students look forward to connecting with Gallo and maybe learning a little bit more. So I appreciate the background.
Of course, my pleasure.
So for students who haven't attended this workshop before and are not too familiar, we want to really talk about the resume. You know that you need it for jobs. So we really want to dive a little bit more into that. Like, what is the purpose of a resume? So it is meant to show your relevant experience. It's meant to support you as a candidate for a job. Sometimes graduate schools will ask you for a resume or a CV when you apply. Some scholarships may ask for it. Really, it showcases your abilities to apply for certain things and be considered a candidate or be considered a recipient for certain awards or scholarships. Primarily, though, it is used in the world of work to apply for jobs. It's really meant to tell your story in a succinct and relevant way. And I mentioned relevant because, when you apply for jobs, people don't necessarily want to know all of your interests or hobbies or your family history necessarily, right? They want to know what's relevant as it relates to work. Resumes don't get you hired. They get you an interview. If you don't make it to the interview, you won't miss, or you will miss out on the opportunity to show your interest in a job and how you are a qualified candidate for a job. So again, it's really important that your resume not be very long and not necessarily be an autobiography, but that is specific to experiences related to the kind of job you're looking for. Job or internship. So we'll talk a little bit about how to write a relevant resume. Primarily, your resume, you want it to be, again, relevant to the position. So what we encourage students to do is create a master resume, something that just lists everything you've ever done, all of your class projects, any volunteer work, maybe even hobbies, but maybe a little more detail about what goes into those hobbies. Now, don't apply for any jobs with that master resume. But take the next step, which would be identifying jobs of interest. So if you're applying for an internship or a career full-time position after graduation, take the time to identify the key skills they're asking for. What are the recruiters asking for in those positions? And then take the time to create a resume tailored to that specific job. So this does mean that you may have multiple versions of your resume. I wouldn't go as far as to say you need 30, 40, 50 versions of your resume by any means. I have had a student share they had like 30 resumes. I don't mean to stress you out in that sense. Just know that if you're applying for different jobs, the message that you send with your resume needs to be cohesive. It needs to show how you have related skills. Because recruiters don't have the time to make those assumptions about your experiences. So typically the format, we recommend a 1 to 2 page resume. Your master resume could be longer, right? 2 to 3, 4. Again, you're not applying with that resume. You're just using it more as a record for yourself. But when you apply for a position, we recommend no more than 2 pages. And those typically are experienced positions or positions that require that much experience. Typically a font size 10 to 12. We recommend using a plain text or font, so Times, Calibri, Arial. Address is optional. It's not typically needed on a resume anymore because it's found on your job application. But on the resume, you definitely want to have contact information, phone, email, LinkedIn URL if you have one. We recommend that it's clean, easy to read, easy to scan, like using bullet points, and avoid using like I, me, my. Tiffany has some great examples we'll share in a minute too. So I mean, we at the Career Center recommend avoiding templates. I'm not sure, Tiffany, if you have a preference for templates or no templates.
Word templates are fine. We don't really care too much as long as, the relevant experience and things like that are getting across on the resume. Sometimes I do find some templates, they take up a lot of they just take up space, honestly, like that circle that's around that one on the right. That would be a template that I've seen in the past where I've given students feedback that that's not recommended just because there's so much wasted space.
Yeah, and that's what I share with students. It's really hard to manipulate anything on a template to utilize that space. Yeah, because once students start adding their projects or their relevant student involvement or outreach, they find that a template might limit what they can share on their resume. So we do recommend just using a plain Word document or Google document. It's utilized in some HR organizations or in some human resources folks or groups to read your resume before it gets to a person. So the applicant tracking system will screen your resume for keywords. Did you mention a specific major or did you mention a specific skill or software? And then if you pass the screening, in a sense, it'll send it over to someone in HR. We just recommend making sure your format on your resume is pretty clear, easy to find things, that you're not risking getting screened out by a computer saying you don't have information when it is there. Yeah. Do you guys use one for Gallo, or is it mostly?
Not currently, but that is something that is likely going to be introduced either the end of this year or going into next. We are bringing in AI to do that initial screen for us. So we'll catch things like if somebody were to copy and paste our job description, our AI is going to catch that. To your point, Evelyn, it's going to pull out those keywords. If it matches that job description, it'll let us know who's going to be the most qualified applicant based off of just the AI screening those resumes. But it's not something that we're currently using. All of our recruiters do screen the resumes themselves. On average, someone's looking at your resume for about 30 seconds. So if your resume is hard to follow, or if it's like paragraph after paragraph, you're likely not going to get an interview.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to find keywords in paragraphs. So I do see a question here. Do resumes get scanned first before it gets to the hands of a recruiter? Like the applicant tracking system, it scans for keywords. If that's not correct, let me know. But do resumes get scanned first before it gets to a recruiter? I'm assuming that would be yes. Want to see your point of view on this as well, Tiffany. Do you need to include a professional profile photo on the resume?
No. Nope. We see that a lot with international students. I think it's pretty common for international, but no, we don't require one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I always tell students it's just taking up some space that you could be using. So we typically recommend a chronological format. So something that is that lists your most relevant or most recent information, I should say, up higher. So that's why on this example, I have education up higher. Typically, if you're graduating soon or currently seeking an internship, employers need to know right away what's your major, what's your graduation date, and if you've taken any relevant classes. So a chronological resume is typically what we recommend for folks that don't already have an extensive work experience. Basically, that's just listing your information in a reverse chronological order, the most present, most current information first, and then older information towards the bottom. Typically, if it's the one page, all of it will be viewable, right? So employers, again, need to be able to see your relevant keywords, your relevant experience in that first screen.
For example, like in our minimum qualifications, if one of the minimum qualifications is an intermediate level of usage of Excel, and we can't see that you have that experience on the resume, you could get screened out. So just make sure you're paying attention to what those minimum qualifications are for whatever role you're applying to, and make sure that your resume matches up to whatever it is that they're looking for. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. That definitely sounds like taking that time to tailor the resume and providing relevant information.
Yep.
Activities and awards, I think if you have space for it and it's something that you're passionate about and it also shows a relevant skill or interest, then go for it. But I wouldn't stress about putting it on there if everything else is really kind of taking up that page. But again, kind of measuring, is this something that's going to help me make it past the initial screening?
Sometimes we do look for activities. We look for like extracurriculars. So if you're a part of like a sorority or fraternity, maybe you're the president or you're like, you're holding some sort of leadership role. That is some of the things that we do look for if we're looking for. So for example, like our rotational management development programs, we are looking for some sort of leadership experience. So we understand that, some college students aren't going to have any sort of like leadership experience in their day-to-day, like maybe work experience, but maybe they have that within their clubs and organizations. If you do have that in your resume, that is something that we do look for. All right, so I'm going to take you through some of the do's. So Evelyn already covered pretty much everything here. This is going to be more of an interactive activity. So just taking you through the do's, and then these next couple of slides, we're going to see some examples. And if you feel comfortable coming off mute, feel free to chat with us, or if you want to just put in your answers in the chat bot, that's totally fine as well. So of course, you always want to include your name, your contact information, your home address, as Evelyn mentioned, your education, so whether that be your major or minor. And then probably the most important for us is your anticipated graduation date. We do look at that. And you need to also include your month and year. So let's say, for example, some of our undergraduate programs, the minimum qualifications is senior class standing. If we don't see a anticipated graduation date on your resume, you won't make it past resume review if we can't find that. So that's just something to call out as well. Dates of employment are also super important. You always want to make sure you're including the month and the year, relevant experience and or project work. We understand that, you being entry level still in your undergraduate program, you may not have any relevant experience. If you have the project work, include that on your resume because that is something that we do look for as well. Same thing as like the technical skills. So whatever sort of top software experience that you do have, whether that be Excel, Python, SQL, I'm just calling out a couple, make sure you're including that in your skills section, but also make sure you're tying it back to your work experience and or project experience as well, because we want to see how you demonstrated those skills too. I already talked about the student clubs and organizations, and then of course just having somebody review your resume. So someone like Evelyn in the career services, having somebody do a double check on your resume is definitely going to help too.
So I'll put in our walk-in hours in the chat for you guys. But yeah, we can definitely be an extra set of eyes on your resume. There is a question in the chat. It says, Tiffany, I know you mentioned that paragraphs are a big no. Would you recommend bullet points in the description of a job description? If neither, what's the best way to go about this?
I would recommend anywhere from 3 to 5 bullet points, clearly explaining what you're responsible for at that role. If it was more of a project, state, what that project entail, and then what that end result looked like as well. Does that answer that question? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I go on to.
I think this next one is the example, if I remember correctly.
I think this one is things not to put maybe on the resume.
Oh, okay. So some things not to include. So irrelevant experience. However, we understand, if you're working at Starbucks or something like that through college, we want to see that experience too. So if you don't have any relevant experience, just make sure you put, whatever experience that you do have, and then just tie it back to some of your project experience as well. That definitely helps. Copying the job description is a big no. We will catch that. So do not do that. Vague work experience and or project experience. So it's hard for us to see, in one bullet point what you're responsible for. So as I mentioned, try to list out 3 to 5 bullet points as far as what exactly you were responsible for in your work or your project. Clearly demonstrate, what those end results were. That way we can get a really good view as far as what your skills and qualifications are as well. Unrelated or off the wall hobbies. This one always makes us laugh. Just try not to include those in your resume. And then this is another big one as well. So an objective statement that actually does not align with what you're applying for. So you'll see on some of the examples, you'll see somebody input an objective statement to a role that doesn't even relate to what they're applying to. So if you do have an objective statement, just make sure it's correct and accurate for whatever you're applying to. Of course, lying on your resume as well, that will be something that will be likely uncovered during an interview. So definitely do not lie. And then the other one I have to just make sure I'm calling it out was excluding your major and your grad date. That's probably the number one reason I reject candidates out for not meeting our minimum qualifications, is because they don't include their resume or their grad date.
I'll just do a quick rundown of some of the sections on our resume, and then I believe we'll get into the examples, which I think will really be helpful for you all to see from a recruiter's perspective what they're looking at. So just to break down the sections here of Wendy Warrior's resume, really an objective is very brief, seeking exposition with why company. Like, you don't want to have a paragraph about yourself. That really should go more in your cover letter. Some may use a summary of qualifications. That's typically someone who's been in the field for a while or wants to draw attention to some specific skills they might have related to that job. I think typically those are more for experienced resumes. I think an objective seeking exposition with why company is simple and easy to identify what you're looking for. So that will typically go up higher. Next, we recommend education, again, to meet that critical need of the employer to see what are they majoring, when are they graduating in, what are they majoring in, when are they graduating. You can add honors if you like, if you feel that would really showcase some of your academic achievements. There is a section you can add as well as relevant coursework. So if you were applying for an accounting internship or a finance internship, and you've taken a few of those finance courses, you may want to list that there. Just to show that you've taken those introductory courses. The experience section is most of the resume. So you want to consider things like part-time jobs, internships, clubs, organizations, leadership. Again, anything that'll showcase some of those soft skills that can be transferred to an internship or to a position. But just keep in mind, it doesn't only have to be paid work experience, unless it's specified in the posting. But typically, any experience, as long as you have an understanding as to why you're putting it on there. How is this helpful for the employer to see? Don't assume that the recruiter will assume anything from your resume. You really need to give folks what you want them to see. We recommend, so this goes to the previous question, we do recommend using bullets to describe your experiences in each position or in each project. We recommend starting each bullet with an action verb, right? So I collaborated, I created, I researched, identified, developed. So what are some action words that can showcase what you did and also indicate an experience or a skill that's specific to that either position or internship? So for example, examined, obtained, collaborated with. You all have had group projects, good or bad. You had to collaborate. If you haven't, I encourage you to collaborate in any upcoming projects so that you can showcase those skills on your resume. And then at the end, the very end here is a skills section. Again, really specific to software, any languages. If you're bilingual or trilingual, mention that in there. I try to avoid soft skills like teamwork, problem solving. Those things I think are more effective when you demonstrate them, whether it's through talking about your labs, or that you wrote a report, or that, again, you're fluent in a specific language. So thinking about what are the soft skills I want to show and demonstrating them through your bullets under a specific example or experience. And when we critique resumes, we can go into that a little bit more, like how to demonstrate those. Have an example here. Tiffany, did you want to take this one away?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, feel free to take yourself off mute, or if you want to just drop your answer in the chat, that's totally fine too. So these are actually some real life examples. So this person actually applied to our IT internship. So based off of everything that myself and Evelyn just went through, what can you tell us about this person's first half of their resume?
It looks like the objective is straightforward. The individual is seeking a part-time entry-level position. Again, the skills and abilities, it's bulleted, as you guys mentioned. And the school has the exact dates.
Does it though?
Well,
UC Davis?
Oh,
actually, someone asked, yeah, are they still in college?
There's no graduation dates.
There's no graduation date. There's no major. I have no idea what this person is majoring in. Also, this person applied to an IT internship. What do you see about the objective statement?
Oh, it's showing like sales or customer service.
It's not relevant. So again, if you're going to have an objective statement, make sure it's relevant to whatever you're applying to. If you have 30 different copies of your resumes, I salute you, but that's really hard to keep organized. So just make sure if you do have one, make sure it's relevant.
Doesn't specify what they're bilingual in.
Yeah. So we can't just assume. So positive attitude, punctual, with an excellent work ethic, well organized, and a team player. That's all great, but we want to see how you demonstrate that. So as Evelyn just mentioned, we want to see how you demonstrate that in your project experience or your work experience.
Also, I don't see anywhere where it mentions like where they got their education for IT or anything that suggests their abilities or skills within like the IT background, like any programs that they work with or anything like that.
Yep, exactly. So this person applied to our engineering internship. What can you guys tell me about this person's resume?
Again, with the skills, they would have to be able to, illustrate that they have all of the things except the math up to calculus, but they could be a little bit more specific with that.
Yep. I see Jessica dropped in the chat, no graduation date. Exactly. There's not even a major. Doesn't include relevant courses. Let's see. Their work experience, that's great. We'd like to see the work experience, but there's no project experience that can maybe back up why this person would be qualified for an engineering internship, let alone they don't have their major listed on their resume. So they were not moved forward past resume review. All right, I think we can probably go to the next one. So this person actually was hired into our engineering internship. What do you see? What do you see the difference between this resume and the last resume we just saw?
So expected graduation dates there.
Yep.
The skills are very specific.
Yep, exactly. Specific major, I'm seeing graduation date, includes relevant courses, GPA. GPA isn't something that we necessarily look at. That's something that some of our hiring managers take into consideration, but it's not going to be a make or break for, why somebody got the job and why somebody did not.
What if it's on the low end? Would you include that?
I would not. If it was like a 2-point grade average, I would just leave it off. It's not a requirement.
Yeah.
Unless whatever role that unless whatever company you're applying for, if they clearly state in their job application that's a requirement, then yes, include that GPA. But if it's not clearly stated, I've never seen a company require a GPA.
Yeah, we recommend only 3.0 and above to list it if you want to list it. Yeah.
Yep. As Shay said, you can see where and how they spent their time preparing for employment in this field. Yep. So they listed their mechanical engineering courses, their computer science courses, their relevant skills. This is all things that we would be looking at when it comes to somebody for, one of our engineering internships. And then we have one more. So this person was also hired into one of our engineering internships as well. So this is just showing you an example of some of the project experience that we'd be looking for, along with some of the leadership and activities that we'd be looking for as well.
There was a question, is there a limit to the number of relevant courses one should list?
I would say if you can fit it on your resume, great. If you can, I don't think it's going to be a make or break, but there really isn't a limit to the number of courses. I would maybe try to make it be just a couple. That way the relevant courses isn't taking up the bulk of your resume. All right. That was it. Those are, like I said, these are real life examples of people that have submitted applications with us and people who have gotten hired with us as well.
Thank you so much. And I think even with this one that's on there now, you can definitely see the difference, right? They have content that's relevant to the kind of position. And it does take time to get it to this final version. So if this is going to be the first resume you write, we don't anticipate that it'll be in this final version, but that's why we have career coaches on campus. If you want to come in and talk to us about, okay, I'm working in a warehouse. I'm mostly providing, I'm following orders and I'm getting things together. Come and talk to us about it. We'll talk about what are the transferable skills? How can we work with getting some of these projects on your resume? But it helps us to even have something on paper.
Yeah.
There was a question, can you quantify how many resumes you get that look like that and are reviewed? I'm not sure, Michelle, if you can elaborate a little bit. What do you mean by resumes that look like that?
I'll give you some context. So we receive anywhere from, at least for me on the undergraduate side, we receive anywhere from 100 to 300 applicants per one of our internship programs, or we call requisitions. So I would say anywhere from 25 to 50% are actually screened out because they don't meet the minimum qualifications for little things like not including graduation dates, majors, things like that. So there are quite a few good resumes that are passed through. I can't quantify, I can't put a number on it. I hire about 300 interns in entry level into the organization about every 12 months. So if that gives you, if that's quantifiable, I'm hoping that answers that question.
That really helps, because I think understanding that, yes, employers do get a lot of applicants per position or per requisition. So it's really important that you take the time to show how you have relevant skills and experiences, because just applying to a position, that's not telling the recruiter necessarily that you have the relevant skills, relevant knowledge, relevant interest even in that position. So really take the time to tailor your materials and show your relevant skills. But that definitely means understanding too, what is the employer looking for? So I like this picture because as we know what a tailor, yes, so Michelle, thanks for, definitely you tell your students it's important to take time on the resume, definitely. And that's kind of why I put this picture of a tailor, right? A tailor looks at your clothes, takes your measurements, makes something that fits you. Right. So it does take some time, but it's definitely worth the effort. And I think the more you do that, the more confident too you are in your own experience and how you can talk about your experience, because your resume is not going to be the only time you talk about your experience, right? In an interview, you're going to have to elaborate. So what does it mean to tailor your resume? Really look at the job description, what stands out, how can you show that you fit what they're looking for? If the position doesn't give you a strong indication, I highly encourage looking at the mission, the vision. What are they about? What's their company culture? How can I show that that's where I want to be? That I'm intentional about this position. So just a quick way, a kind of a visual, like how do I tailor this? This is a position, I copy pasted a position in here. They want preferred experience, type of work. But if you look at where the bullets or where the arrows are, I highlighted, they want someone that can provide direct care, they can evaluate patients, and they can perform minor procedures. So if I was recruiting for this position, I would be looking for that kind of language on the resume. Like, can you show that this is something you're familiar with doing, or at least you're aware of, whether it's through a class or through some experience that you've had. We recommend using strong action verbs again. So for your bullets, maybe on your draft, you can say things like responsible for delivery of supplies to the correct office. And that's not a bad thing, right? What we could work on next is what are some verbs that can help illustrate different skills. So like instead of, I helped with research, you can just start with research. I researched this organization, or I completed this project. There are stronger words you can use to indicate your skills. And then when it comes to describing your experience, you also want to show, not tell, right? So what I mean by that is demonstrating. So if I say I'm a team player, can I demonstrate where I've been a team player? Like, where have I had to work with other people? And again, don't feel like you have to have it in a final version when you come and talk to us about the resume. We're here to support you with any questions you might have. So if you already have a resume, maybe add things after the tips that have been given here, like definitely your major and your grad date. But bring it to us, let us talk to you about it. Tell us what you want the resume to be saying about you or about your experience. And then we can give you our perspective, right? These are things that might be missing. I know Tiffany's offered to share additional information if you guys wanted to reach out to her. So I highly encourage you to stay connected. I wanted to highlight our resume review services. You can come into the Career Center for a walk-in hour. You don't need an appointment specifically at these times. So Tuesday through Thursday, 10:30 to noon in the Student Center, 205. You could also make an appointment through your Higher Stand State or Handshake account to get a resume review. And that also goes for cover letters. We didn't want to spend too much time on cover letters today, but I don't know if you guys have any questions, feel free to share those. Tiffany, how do you feel about cover letters? Do you typically use those when you? Okay.
I don't read them.
Okay.
Some of my teams, they do review them, but I specifically do not. If you do not include a resume, or I'm sorry, not a cover letter, it's not going to be, again, a make or break. It's not something that we're actively reviewing. I don't think anyone on my team reviews cover letters. I know certain business leaders, they do in the organization, but it's just a nice to have.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of a question I was going to ask. What about the application? So if do you guys strictly go off of resume, or do you also consider things that are on an application?
Resume is what that's the legal document that we do have to go off of.
Oh, okay. Hey, what do you think? What your thoughts are on this? I'll tell students if a resume is, let's say, 2 pages and half of that content is not directly related to the job, I recommend that students, keep the resume to the relevant experience to what's being asked for. And then in an application, you can add other things that you feel might be helpful.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I've seen that for some of our production type roles that I've recruited for in the past. I see that from time to time where it's like the resume is very relevant, but then in the actual application, I see additional jobs listed too. So if you go through like a recruiter phone screen, I'm sure the recruiter would deep dive into some of that other experience that you do list on the application.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely still say that everything needs to be on the resume that you want them to consider. So there was a question, is there a career center on the Stockton campus? So yes, I do. I'm actually the career coach at the Stockton campus on Thursdays. If you want to meet another time, let me know. We can connect via email. But technically my office is in Stockton as well. If you have any questions, definitely send them through the chat. I'm just going to send this last slide, I believe, is some quick reminders. If you need, if you're attending for class credit or you need me to email or someone or whatnot, send me an email with your name and what you need for the verification. Just a quick reminder that resumes don't necessarily get you a job, but they help you get to that next step. So it's critical for the resume to really showcase how you have relevant skills for the position. Highly encourage that you take advantage of the resume critiques by a quick career coach, and then also sign up on Higher Stand State to post your edited resume. So once you have the resume critiqued and you feel like you're at a comfortable place, and even now, if you're ready to go, you can post your resume on Higher Stand State to have it shared with employers that are hiring. So does anyone have any additional questions? Any questions you want to ask Tiffany?
Yeah, I'm here to be a support. I'm going to drop my email in the chat. I'm not sure. There's a couple questions that came through. I'm not sure if they're asking for your email, Evelyn, or if it's mine.
I'll put mine too, yeah. I think if there were questions about the Stockton campus, feel free to reach out, or even our campus at Turlock. We can help you get connected.
Does anybody have any questions for myself or Evelyn? We're here to support you. I definitely want to be a resource for anybody on this call.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I got an interview for Gallo December, but I was not selected for the internship. Can I still apply for the future internships?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free. You probably won't be able to reapply for the current opening, but feel free to resubmit an application for the next one. We're just about wrapping up all of our intern recruitment actually here in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, we'll be reposting again in Nation. So include your institution, so Stanislaus State, your major, your minor, your anticipated graduation date, your month and year, always include that. Dates of employment, month and year, of course, as well. Any sort of relevant experience or any experience if you don't have any relevant experience, and or project work as well. Also include some of those technical skills, whether that be, Word, Excel, Python, SQL, anything that you've picked up through some of your coursework. We want to see that demonstrated on your resume as well. Another thing that we also look for as well is if you're involved in any sort of like student clubs and organizations, we want to see what that, student club was, what your role was as a member, or maybe, you're a president, whatever the case may be, we want to see that listed as well.